go. Good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure. You know what? My voice was a lot less husky and a lot clearer the first day I got here, but seems to have gotten a little raspy over the week. It's really my pleasure to introduce our two presenters this morning. Mario Maltese, as you can see, CTSD, CTSI, CQT. He's the Executive Director of the Association for Quality and Audiovisual Technology Incorporated. He's also a Senior Academy Instructor for Infocom International. He has 42 years of experience in AV system design and installation, as well as the leadership and management of an engineering systems integration business. Mario holds an MSEE in electrophysics and a BSEE in microwave engineering. He was a recipient of the 2004-2005 Educator of the Year. He's senior faculty at the Infocom International Academy, and he's received the Fred Dixon Award for Excellence Infocom 2011. Mario is a senior member of the American Society for Quality, member of the Audio Engineering Society, and the Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineers, and an author, AV 9000, Defining Quality in Engineered Audiovisual Systems. We also have Dan Doolen. Dan is a Chief Instructional Media Systems Engineer in the CITIES or Cities Department? What is that? It's a little wonderful. Yeah, that's good. Dan is responsible for the design, installation, maintenance, and computer support for 230 general assignment technologies enhanced classrooms. This department also does AV project planning, design, and installation, along with AV contract management and quality assistance activities on the Urbana-Champaign, Chicago, and Rockford campuses. Please join me in welcoming our two presenters this morning.
Thank you very much, and thank you for coming. I was here all week. No, I'm just actually, that's all the gobbledygook, but the most important thing there is 42 years of doing AV technology. And why that's important is because what I'm going to be speaking about today is probably the most important thing that I've learned over those 43 years. And that is because it deals with the human systems that put the AV systems in. That's where it's much more complex. Dan is has been applying the AV 9000 doctrine over the last couple of years. He's going to be sharing with you his successes and problems and for what he's been going through the last couple of years. He's the good-looking one of the group over here. Purpose of the training, first of all, understand the urgency and the cost. And why that's important is because the costs are hidden, and they're phenomenal. And quality kind of like glazes over people's eyes sometimes, because it's poorly defined or over-defined. So we're going to talk about some of the definitions that would help in understanding where we're going with this. I'm kind of going to present the AV 9000 battery test by telling you where to go to, because there's just outside the scope for such a short stay right here to go through each of the tests. There's a battery of tests, and I'll explain them more, and culminating in the commissioning test at the end, which defines AV, whether it was done completely. And there are 67 tests, so I'm not going to have the time to do it here, but I'll show you where we can get them. And I'm going to share with you some of the lessons learned. You said, just to keep you confused, you saw one title of there, I'm the CEO of Audiovisual Resources. And that's a for-profit organization that we do testing and verification directly for customers all over the world. And what we've learned from that in testing and verifying kind of motivated my group to start the nonprofit, more of an education and training on AV technology quality. And of course, Dan's going to give us a case study, bring us back down to earth at University of Illinois. There's a tremendous amount of change. It's ridiculous, the amount of change that's going on. And that, you know, you have different evolutionary cycles, right? You have biological evolution, and that's kind of slow. You have cultural evolution, that's a bit faster and seems to be going faster. But there's technology. And that's going so fast, you just can't keep up with it. Such that the culture of AV technology, that means the vendors, the technology managers, they're not keeping up with the rapid change of technology. And so it presents the problem that if you're still doing things the way you were doing it 5 years ago, your process is at least suspect. Hey, these machines are talking to each other. You know, the displays are talking to the relays, to the sources. And if you don't ask what are they saying between each other, or if you don't have the tools to do it, you're out of the loop. So there's so much change. And the manufacturers certainly can't keep up. Manufacturers are using the integrators as their alpha testers. That's what it's come down to. So it's moving so fast that how do you get the training? How do you get the instrumentation? Because it does need instrumentation. How do you get your processes in place to keep up with this? Because now more than ever, you have to have a process-based approach in acquiring audiovisual technology. So the outline this morning, very briefly, we're going to talk about the magnitude of the problem, just an overview, basic quality concepts, talk about milestones in the development of a project, briefly talk about the commissioning tests, and we're going to hear from Dan about the city's approach and what he's been doing. Is quality an issue? Well, AV technology is demanding 10% of a capital budget. That we got from Dan, and now I think it seems to be creeping up. We're looking at projects on the commercial end that it's more like 14%. So your management is going too fast for them. They're not funding these projects. Look who I'm telling. They're like you don't know. Poor quality can easily approach 20% of a total sale. That's what's been, if you look at what the cost of quality is, quality itself is free. Poor quality, that costs a bundle. And you'll find there's so much efficiency in focusing on things going the right way, just doing what you're supposed to do to get compliance with the order, that you save a tremendous amount, roughly 20%. But because the costs are hidden, it's kind of difficult to see. They're not putting numbers on things. There's no quality management. Quality management is all about putting numbers on things and evaluating and making changes accordingly. So is quality an issue? Well, yeah. I'll point on this one. In the USA, about a third of what we do consists of redoing work previously done. You guys agree with that? Have you seen this? Have you seen issues? Yeah, start to put the numbers on it. I'm not going to go to each of the costs, but I mean, this is one of 5 slides where the costs are hidden. And just to get a feel for it, how do you get a number on it? Take what an individual gets as compensation for a year. Add to that the benefits, could be 30%. So let's say somebody's making $70,000 with benefits, it's $100,000. Divide that by 2,000, which is roughly the number of hours that individual will work in a year. So that's $50 an hour that the enterprise costs for that person. So if he's wasting, or if you have to put 21 hours to put an operator in a video conferencing room because the video conferencing system is inside your perimeter, and you can't check out a new video conferencing room without giving them another port to test out. And that integrator is taking 21 hours to configure. You're going to figure what that person cost you just to sit there on the network. And it goes on. The follow-up, the venting your frustration. Start putting a number on it, and that gives you more of an insight as to the true cost of your procurement. Certainly not the price tag. So let's look at what's the definition of quality, quality management. What is that? Are there any ISO 9000 companies? Anybody here ISO 9000? Okay, AV 9000. Have you heard of AV 9000? Yeah, sure, it was in the brochure. Quality control versus quality assurance and commissioning. First thing, what is quality? This is one of the most difficult things to define because everybody knows what the definition is until you ask the person what is quality. The definition that we're talking about is really fitness for use. I just bought an AV system to be integrated into my classroom. Is it fit for use? That's the simplest way to put it. It means conformance, not elegance. This is where a lot of the confusing is. The first erroneous assumption has something to do with luxury. I can buy a Mercedes. Yeah, and it costs a bunch. I could buy a Hyundai, and it's a big economic alternative. But as long as that Hyundai works and does what I expect it to do, I'm happy with its quality. If I wanted to spend for luxury, I would get the Mercedes. In either case, the quality is not an issue. The automotive industry was on its back in the 90s until they caught wind of this. They had to survive. And what I'm proposing today is along the same lines, exactly the same lines. This is my quote: quality, brevity, and profits. Different pronunciation of the same word. On the integration side, we received a request for a quotation, not a bid, we don't do bids, for a large system in a lodge at a commercial client. The technology manager gets back to me and says, our labor cost is 1/3 my competition. And I says, that's probably what it costs them to do the job. You can't beat the economics of doing things right the first time. You're focusing on doing the work in compliance with the order, not learning about things, not trying to figure out what the calibration is. I'm using calibrated instruments. Make the adjustment, I'll move on. Quality management system is a way to put processes in place to make sure the customer is going to get what they ordered. And it's going to meet in product, practice. It means you expect it to go in according to accepted industry practices, which are pretty well defined, and there are references to it. And you expect it to perform. You got to put numbers on it. How loud is it? How bright is it? Am I going to get complaints from my customers or your clients? ISO 9000 is the international consensus for quality management systems. Okay, it means you have a series of processes in place to make sure that, number one, you're compliant, and number two, the customer's happy. Number three, you're continually improving, because Murphy's all over the place. Murphy works very well in my shop. Difference is we catch the son of a bitch before the customer does. That you follow these checklists, these systems to monitor and measure to make sure the customer gets no whiff of Murphy. AV 9000, this is what we're trying to move in. ISO 9000 is too general. It's for everybody. It's for education. It's for medical. It's for manufacturers. Start out being for manufacturers. But it is very broad. There are no metrics. So very similar to what the other industries have done. They have, like in the automotive industry, when they really had their backs against the ropes, they say, let's start with ISO 9000. You cannot be a vendor unless you are ISO 9000. And you have to follow these metrics. They call it QC 9000. That was later changed. That was the American manufacturers. Now Toyota and the German manufacturers, they got into it. Now it's a TC 16047 or something like that. And it became a industry standard. But it started as a de facto standard The big three got together and said, we got to do this. AV9000 has proven well over 1,000 systems to be the simplest, most cost-effective criteria. Cost-effective. The tests shouldn't take so long. They have to be done. They have to be done first by the techs for the people who are providing the system, and second of all, they should be able to be verified. It has to be auditable, like the ISO 9000 standard is. It's auditable. AVR is an ISO 9000 company. We get audited every year. A guy comes in, he goes through like a fine-tooth comb. Number one, is our quality management system documented in according to what the standard calls for? And number two, are we following it? Is there evidence that we're following it? And ISO 9000, the AV 9000 is where we're going with this. And this is where I'm pleading with you people. Because just like the automotive industry, when they couldn't stand it anymore, it was the manufacturers, the customer that said, you can't be a vendor unless you're a QC 9000 and ISO 9000. What would it be if all your vendors, your designers and installers, all had quality management systems, all following the same metrics? Your costs would plummet. The vendors would make more profit. It's crazy. Sometimes I feel like we're dragging them, screaming, kicking them to make more money. But this is, you can't beat the economics of doing things right the first time. You got the power to do it. Imagine if the whole college and university multimedia group said, you have to be AV 9000 compliant at least to start off with until it gets going. Hopefully, do you worry about third-party testing verification when you buy a new car? You used to have a lemon law, right? But now, your car works. It's good. You change the oil, 3 years, it still works. Why can't we get this with AV technology? Criteria for verifying that the system is complete. It's in compliance in every key milestone, project, and development. It goes beyond just the end. In order to get that quality assurance, you got to check it every step of the way, every milestone in the project's development. It is written specifically for the benefit of the users. Every industry is very confusing when it comes, who the heck is the user? The manufacturers think that the integrator is the user because they're the ones, first of all, configuring and applying it. They're the ones also with the dealership agreement. The contractors think that the consultant or the designer is the customer because without their bid package, they wouldn't be able to get the project. The consultant thinks the architect is the customer because they're the ones that they market to. And even the technology managers, who is your customer? The ones who use the AV system, the ones who present and or they are presented to. They're in the AV technology experience. That's the user. And why is that important? Because that's the person who pays for everybody's lunch. Everybody's lunch, including the manufacturers, the designers, the consultants. See, Infocom is for the membership of Infocom. You know, it's a little bit, it's a membership organization. Very similar to the telecommunications group. You had a telecommunications industry association, but you had Quest, a nonprofit group that just focuses on the customer for the quality management. They're the ones that came up with their metric standard, TL 9000. And this is what we're doing here. And it's the product, AQAV is the owner for it, and we took what AVR was doing, you know, over years and years, and opened up to a wider group. And we had people like Scott Walker, Dan Doolen. We had people from JP Morgan Chase on the customer side. The biggest change to what we were using for our metrics came from the technology managers. And they're the ones that came up with some very valuable insight and tests before a system is turned over. And that's what this de facto standard is. Eventually, it'll become an industry standard. But it had to go outside the box. The status quo is not where we want to go. Nobody's happy with the status quo. Okay? The traditional quality control, you have a series of processes. You know, you get your design, you hopefully finalize the design and the submission. You have a staging where everything is built in the shop, configured, tested fully and all you have to do is bring it to the field, and then it's tested again in commissioning in the actual acoustic environment and everything installed. And then usually you have a consultant walk through, or you may look at it and say, okay, does it pass? If it doesn't pass, what do you do? Sometimes you got to go way to the beginning. And that's where it's a little bit too late or too expensive to fix anything. Quality assurance means you're looking at and testing it with a checklist test, a battery of tests at every stage to make sure you're online. Why? Because if you had a requirement for a sound system at a college hall to overcome the din of 200 screaming college kids, but you have installed 4-inch loudspeakers 25 feet up in the air. Ain't gonna happen, kid. Ain't gonna happen. And so what you have now, what's the cost of changing it? You want to catch that stuff when it's cheap to do. You change it with a piece of pencil and paper. So that's why the quality assurance aspect of it. And AB 9000 has a checklist for every stage to make sure that you're on target. This is a confusing diagram I put up, but the reason that is because it's set up by process by the customer and the AV system. And what's significant here is that the customer has an input here when he defines his needs analysis. And then it goes to a bunch of steps where a lot of people are involved, and he doesn't see it until it's actually installed, the customer. And you ask us, what's going on? I gave you a down payment or something, what do you do? So you need to be able to communicate. But it also underscores the importance of a plain language narrative. And that's one of your responsibilities. What do you want this system to do? The more complete, concise, and clear that you are in a plain language. Forget the technical mumbo jumbo. Tell me what it is you want to do. And AB 9000 says you take that narrative, and that's your yardstick that you apply at every one of these stages. In design review, does this design hit everything that the customer asks for, is expecting? In engineering review, staging. Hey, this is nothing to sneeze at. This is important stuff. No, I'm sorry. So that's why we have to put these individual checklists in each one of these stages to match it. Third-party testing and verification, not just because I'm third-party testing and verification, it is the absolute best. Some people they'll pick this up internally, like with Dan's group. We trained Dan's group on doing these tests, and they become the second party. But nothing beats third-party testing verification. We always catch stuff. It also, has anyone gotten into an issue with, you use design consultants? Some of you? No, more and more. Do they check out the system? Yeah, that's when they raise it, okay. Yeah. Basically, it's a conflict of interest if they do. Because the stuff we find, many times, it's not what the installer did. The system can't work. And so, rather than avoid the finger pointing, no, it's you, no, you are, and back and forth, wait a second. We're just looking at the system, and the system is performing this way, and that takes all the bullets out of the weapons. So, that is the best. And you'll see language on that website for, you can get for free all the staging. I mean, it's a standard you pay for, but the staging and the commissioning checklist, we make that available for the technology managers to put that into your language for your RFPs. So that you can get, and that's the latest current version of it. But when you do that and ask for these commission reports, there's a language in there that says that you may elect to bring in a third party. Like if there's a problem, if there is a problem of performance, you may pull in a third party, and the funding for that will come out of your retainer. And you put that into the language of the contract, you've funded the corrective action. Forms and checklists, yeah, every time you get on an airplane, if you look at the cockpit, they're open and you see them, they might have made the same flight from New York to Miami 100 times, but they're still using the checklist. That's what all this is done, all we're doing. It does take discipline. It's real easy to do a check mark, but you got to look at it. Each system is different, different application. It takes discipline and character. You know, towards the end of the day, if you're under pressure and stuff, it's real easy to just check. No, you're putting a signature on the bottom of that saying that you have checked this. And when you do that, I mean, it catches it. This stuff works. No longer do you go, hello, test. Okay, the audio works. Doesn't hack it anymore. You need instrumentation. Without putting a number on things, all you have is a biased opinion. I could put some rap music up here. And if you get 2 or 3 generations, I'll ask anybody, how loud is this? I'm going to get 3 different answers. But if you take a sound pressure level meter, even a type 2, and you say it's 66 dB SPLA rated slow, it's a sound pressure. It's repeatable. Somebody else can come in with another type 2 calibrated meter. Stops all the argument. You need instrumentation. AVR sells a kit. We take a 10 and 10 on the course. You can get the stuff yourself, but at least it's a prescribed kit in a Pelican case that can go on an airplane as carry-on. But the list is on the AVRes website, avres.com. Nowadays, you do need additional instrumentation. You need to test for luminosity. You need to be able to look at Cat 5 because the whole world's going on that. And especially since you're at the theoretical limit of Cat 5, it becomes more of an issue. RF sweeps and spectrum analyzers become necessary in light of the white spaces being covered by the digital TVs that pop up in different parts of the day and blow your wireless mics out. You have responsibilities, certainly. You have to clearly define what it is that the system is. You got to be objective. You got to involve in a list of signatures from users. You're not the user. You have to get the people and nail them down a little bit and say, this is our plain English narrative. Do you buy into it? The good ones, get them to sign off on it. You know, this is the tough part. This is what a design consultant who's worth his salt spends the time in doing, to make sure that you overcome the laziness on the part of the users to make the decision, what do you want to do? What resolutions are important? So you got to fund the project, obviously. You also have to carefully inspect at each stage. You got to reach out. You want to catch the problems before it gets too embarrassing for you and your customers. This is also another thing that takes a little bit of courage, overcome the lazies. All right? It's real easy to just, shrug your shoulders and say, okay, you might have developed an affinity to the integrator. He's a nice guy. You may have felt his pain that they had to go through dealing with the manufacturers. But boy, don't give up. You got to set a balance. You are in a leadership position. You can set the pace to make sure that you are not going to accept any defects whatsoever. There's no reason why you should. This substantial completion concept makes me throw up. When I bought a car, I don't want a substantially complete car. I want the damn car. I want to be able to get in. I'm expecting 4 wheels. And, so there's no reason why you can't. It works. I have seen zero defect systems do it all the time, if you insist on the process. Very quickly, the system performance criteria is where you try to get some of the numbers in on these things. The more clear and concise, if it's important to you, put the numbers in. Design review, get involved with that. Is this going to work? Do I need a mock-up? Do I need to see what I'm doing if there's something custom or something like this? Certainly on the user interface and the control systems, you may want to see these things mocked up. Get involved with the design review. Site preparation. This is where usually the integrator falls on his face. He's expecting the system to be in place, and yet the IP connections might be there, but they're not ported, they're not, and then the integrator goes up there and says, oh, okay, I got an answer from a ping. Oh, seems to be a printer on the 5th floor. So when you do the testing and verification, these are some of the inputs that you want to have. That you want to get the customer narrative first and foremost, the approved system drawings, the programmer's design kit, which means it's a button-by-button specification of what you want the control system to do when you have these touchscreens. There's no way you can tell from a wire map or from a control system flow diagram that you want, say, the lights to dim to a preset when video conferencing mode is chosen. You need to have that defined in a button-by-button, and this could be verified then. Staging is probably the most important thing cost-wise. Get the system completely installed and configured and tested in the shop. There's a 1 to 3 rule. Every hour of troubleshooting you take in the shop would equate to 3 hours of troubleshooting in the field, where you don't have the resources, you don't have the tools, you don't have the time to do so. Meanwhile, you want the integrator not camping out with bedrolls in your space. You're going to expect to use the space. So make sure that all they have to do is come into the field hook it up and move on. Staging is hugely important, and a tremendous cost savings to the integrator if you can put his feet to the fire to make sure they do it. Input documents, output documents now. There's a checklist, but it's kind of in a checklist language. You need to take the results of the checklist and move it into something that's more management, executive summary. And we kind of like break it out into 3 areas. Non-conformances. Non-conformances means there's a function that doesn't work. You know, the user's going to notice this. If he's expecting these functions in the narrative and I can't watch cable TV because the cable feed's not there, well, that's a non-conformance. Observations. The user won't notice this. The user won't know that there's a difference between the label and the drawing, but it still has to be fixed. You can't finalize a system. And performance notes. Commission report, the same type of output document. The www.aqav on that website for AV9000, you can get a free copy of the checklists, and it has the language. It makes procurement real easy because that's your how-to. This is a real-life boilerplate. The ones you get from a design consultant, I've never seen one that has any value. So the net result is it's just ignored. What we learned over 1,000 systems, number one, it works. It catches defects. That's what you want. You want to turn over 0 defects. Systems are not adequately tested. They say we didn't have time or something. But when you go through the test, we found that son of a gun, there's no way they could have tested it. They're not following it. It does take time. They're not going to, don't expect this stuff to go in and just work. It's not a refrigerator. You can't check your own work. We always find things. If internally we train integrators on CQT training, they're certified quality technician, and so that they're able to test themselves internally before it goes out. But it's important that just like internal auditing on ISO 9000, you can't have the people that wire the system actually be the one that does the test. Also what we learned, manufacturers are not forthcoming with vital information. I mean, integrators sometimes they're like one-legged guys in an ass-kicking contest. Gain structure, for some reason, they have a tough time with. They don't have the basic instrumentation. They don't understand. But to give them credit, neither do the manufacturers, as I find out. If the gain structure is not set, then all your DSP devices might be starved for echo cancellation. You're not going to get the same performance. People are going to have difficulty hearing. Gain structure seems to be part of the black art for some reason, and it's so easy. Focus seems to be on the customer, not the user. You know, and I think the next one is labeling inconsistencies. You get these conference rooms all the time. The breakout box says laptop 1, laptop 2. On the switcher, it says PC 1, PC 2. And on the drawing, it says front laptop, you know, it says something else, you know. There's no consistency. It might have been great in the mind of the person putting it in, but what about the user? And I've yet to find a system where they've been consistent. Serviceability not given the necessary value. You got to assume that things are going to fail. How long is it going to take to make the swap? What did you do with the configuration information? In the old days, you used to track, manufacturers making and model and serial number. Now we've identified 18 fields: firmware, software, IP address, subnet address, passwords, SSID, web code or WPA code, everything. If you got to have a failure, how long is it going to take you to put it back up? You got to document all of this stuff. Functions that are not included in substantially complete, essentially, they get overlooked. Unless you're following the checklist, they just drop it. There's an auxiliary plate in the back that you forgot about. These are some of the good. I'm going a little bit over, so you got it in the slides. But basically, to summarize, the contractors actually learn and enjoy this. They usually push to have the third parties in because we're training them how to do it. Everybody wants to do right. Everybody wants to walk away from a job with a reputation intact. Doesn't always do it. It is up to you. You're the change agent. If you're going to insist on it, it'll happen. The whole industry will change if you change. And it takes a little bit of getting over the lazies, the forecast and all this stuff. But these are the things that I would certainly start to push for. Get the standard which has the checklist. Get familiar with it. Get the training. Insist that your people have it. Certainly have the courage to insist on zero defects. Any questions? We'll come back to questions later. Dan, I'm sorry I went over it a little bit.
Since we are running a little bit behind, I'm going to kind of set through some of these. This is what site stands for, Information Technology.
Is your mic on?
Can you hear me now? Campus Information Technologies and Educational Services, that's the main group on campus that we belong to. Our department is the Classroom and Conference Media Engineering Services. Okay, so now you know where we are. This is kind of what we do. The majority of it is supportive general assignment classrooms, but we also do contract management, procurement, and those kind of negotiations for the AV consulting, integration, and the commodity. We have various different contracts. For today's discussion, we're going to really concentrate on the process of capital construction and how do we get some of these AQAV type principles involved into your campus facility standards, so when you do build new facilities and systems that you have this type of quality assurance. Today we're going to ask you to think, we're not going to go through all of this, but think about some project that you were involved with that went sour. And you really didn't have any control over it. It was one of those things that happened. And think about that one for a while and keep that in the back of your mind. Because hopefully through the next couple of slides, we're going to challenge that belief that you had nothing that you could do. We're going to try to use what Mario has just discussed for quality assurance in a process and get it into your processes. Not just your department, not just yours, but get other people to get ownership of it on your campus, okay? Again, for the most part, we're going to be talking about capital construction. There are many different processes that put your AV systems into classrooms, and there are many that you could probably contribute to this list. But for the most part, we're going to talk about capital construction. So who drives capital construction on your campus? Who actually is the one that takes and has charge and drives this whole process? Facilities. There's also capital programs There's all sorts of different places on different campuses, because campuses all have different cultures. But it's up to you to know who that person is and really reach out to them and get to know them. I mean, this is something that Matthew Silverman and his co-presenter presented the other day too. So what's the difference between these two upcoming slides? Because this to me is what we find is the most difficult. Here is from our university campus website. This is the different stages of capital construction project. You notice there are 8 different boxes, and it takes it all the way into warranty and post-construction. Now, here is an industry view. Notice you start out with an architectural program, you go through your building design, you go through your building construction, and you move in an occupancy. That's your basic building construction timeline. That can take up to 2 to 4 years for a new building, or 44 months average. You go through this here. Was it something I said? Okay, here's the part with the technology in it. You have 2 different phases. One is your infrastructure. Basically, you're in line with the building construction. You're working with them on the program. You're feeding them information for your infrastructure requirements, what kind of bid documents you're going to be putting together for them on physical infrastructure. And, sorry. Then you're taking, during the construction, you're monitoring your infrastructure. Your system design starts probably right around the middle of building design, about maybe 8 months to a year out, when that system is actually required. So you're looking at your actual system design, and you're going into your system install, and then your checkout and training. So what's the difference between this, and this one? Well, there's your hint. It's the very beginning. Now, if you notice, you have needs identified. Somebody has this idea, the department or whatever has an idea that they want to actually start something. Then you have your project initiation, where they actually initiate and say, yes, we pulled together all the information. And then conceptualization is one of those stages where they may go out and have an AE involved. Again, this is one of the things I want to point out. This is where you become very, very important. Quality assurance is really good if you have something to build. In here is where you're actually identifying and securing funds and sources. You're talking about your different needs and requirements. There's no contract with any outside firm at this point in time. This is internal. This is where you can come into play. We had 2 projects on campus. This is important to me when we go through and we talk to these different departments on actually getting involved. One department, they both had a new building, equivalent, we're going to say about $60 million. They both had an AV need of about $5.5 to $6 million stated. But Department A did not pay any attention to this stage and figured they would just do it during when they had A&Es come in. So they didn't actually put their budget together. Group B did so. Group A never did recoup those costs. Can you imagine going into this next stage where you have to present all of this to the Board of Trustees and say, we need this amount of money, and then come back to them after you've gotten into design and say, oh yes, we made a mistake. We were $2.5 million off on our AV budget. Doesn't really look good to you. Okay, so that's where you can come into play. This is where we do our work for free, and we're a cost recovery unit. We go in and we work with departments, we get them on the right track. We write up our projects, our owner's project requirements And since we're going to be running out of time here pretty quick, I want to make sure that you understand that is a very key point. That sets your stage for how is this to be designed. It's to be designed with quality assurance type steps in it. The process that you just heard about, the AQAV, those are things that have to be spelled out for them. You have to refer them to your facility standards and campus system standards so they understand that when they do this design and they come up with a project budget before bidding, that they're designing to the right criteria, because it can make a world of difference on what you put in there and demand from these contractors and what you actually have to pay for. Okay, so what's done during those phases that's given to the architect and is actually used for negotiating fees with the architect? It's your project scope. At the University of Illinois, every project will have a project scope statement, program statement, with all the background information. These are some of the things that are involved with it. The AV program statement on our campus is a part of that. If they don't have AV, they still have to get from us, this is still ongoing in negotiations a little bit, this being reestablished. If they don't have AV, then they write to us and say, Dan, this project is up. We need a AVPS statement from you, but there's no AV. Will you please confirm and give us approval to move on to the next steps? And we do, okay? But if there is AV, then we're involved and we're meeting with end users, we're meeting with the departments, and we're developing those owner's project requirements. Project scope. This is part of the AV project scope. What is this room going to be used for? Not your technology identification, but what's it going to be used? How is technology involved in a very high level? General project requirements. This is one of the things that we have a real problem with. You have to demand that your AV consultants and designers have the proper certifications and experiences. We demand that they have CTSD and the accompanying experience with them. The CTSD is, does everybody know what that is? It's from Infocom, okay. It gives you a common language to work with these people. We've had designers come in and, oh, they were their technology guru. Well, that's fine, but do you know what this, and this is? Some of the things that are in the AQAV process are delivery assumptions. How is this going to be delivered? Is it going to be through an integration firm? Is it going to be through an in-house? Is it a design, bid, build? Those kind of things. Okay, we also give them a financial opinion of probable costs. And when we can, we also give them a probable cost for ongoing recurring needs. Okay? And just as important, we tell them what our program statement does not include. We don't pay for infrastructure, which would include your power, conduits, and other things. Those are supplied by others. Screens are supplied by others. We spec them, but we don't buy them and mount them. It's those kind of things that make the difference. Okay? So who's in charge on your department for creating that program statement? Those are things, again, this is kind of a rhetorical question, but it's somebody you need to identify and understand who that person is. And then, just as important, who creates the AVPS if one is actually created on your campus. Okay? Campus facility standards. This is where we took the majority of our time in 2009, 2010. They include the different pieces that call out what the end product is supposed to be accomplishing. So you have building elements and or actual specifications on how workmanship actual technical standards. Okay? And of course, exhibits to go along. I have 10 minutes. So, documents created, kind of get an idea of some of these things. These are just narratives that tells the intent on some of these building elements, classrooms, instructional media and audiovisual systems. And this one here on the top, I'm sorry. There we go. This one here on the top is really important because this is what your AV consultant, through your architect, is contracted for. Those deliverables mean a lot. We're finding out that those are negotiated away for pricing, and we're getting back to getting those incorporated to make sure that they're handled by the proper people that have the certifications to do that. And an architect or an engineer firm just isn't signing off on them. Okay. We wrote this spec. Everybody acquainted with this section that goes into a bid section? This it's a very beefy little document with a lot of exhibits, and it scares a lot of project managers, but it is for systems that have a very large AV component. It can be pared down some. Unlike the AQAV, this can be pared down. If you look at the AQAV as a process, it can be applied to just about anything, okay? So don't get excited about quality assurance being something that cannot be adjusted for the project. Every step is there, it just doesn't take as long. These were the exhibits. This is all on the web, so I'm just going to click through them. We're running out of time. And then tying it all together is another set of slides. Do you have questions for Mario? Because I think that's very important that you be able to access Mario and ask him questions, or myself on this stuff. And if not, then I'll continue on. Please.
I think many of us, are familiar with building a standard classroom, and maybe it's through, experience with having built several of them. And we might say our campus standard is this projector with this size screen installed 14 feet away from it. Is there a standard in terms, but we get into a larger space, a lecture hall, where the screen might be twice as large in terms of that. Is there a standard light measurement, not projected, but measurement on the screen in terms of saying this is adequate for a space with given X number of ambient light is always a limiting factor? That's a big question.
Yeah,
That's
probably.
a big question, and it's not an easy answer.
It's more about contrast ratio and more about your ability to control the lighting that you have more than anything else. So on front projection, you have a different set of variables, obviously, than on flat screen and rear projection. And it's the contrast ratio, and Infocom just put a standard out on that, so I certainly invite you to look at it. It makes a difference if it's motion or still. But in measuring a lot of them, I'm getting away with 3 to 1 of a contrast ratio. And that you can verify with an iPhone and a free app.
Right. Everything you do is a process of decisions and questions that you have to ask yourself. And as Mario pointed out, there's a new standard out that you can take a look at and apply what's common sense for your campus.
Rules of thumb I worry about because Infocom gives you the rules of thumb, but it's really your enterprise that you got to look at.
Right.
I mean, they give a rule of thumb that the size of the image has to, the furthest viewer can't be more than like 6 times the height of the image. Well, if you go to a pharmaceutical place or a medical school, look at their graphics, and they might want no more than 5 times the height. So feel free. You got students. I would look at the overarching decision maker is the empirical analysis. that you take on your own with instruments. You can talk to me more afterwards.
Please.
I've been involved in a project for the last year and a half that most of its missteps involving the audio visual in terms of, first, they underfunded it by $1 million. Secondly, they hired one of the well-known audio-visual consultants in North America. I will call them Sexton. And what's happened is now because of all these problems with the money related to the AV, we've created a series of buyback plans where we're just going to listen. If you can't afford it, don't do it. It's in a buyback plan. And I was just wondering if that is a strategy that you think would be a wise thing for us going forward. We're going to have our decision probably within the next probably 2 or 3 weeks.
Okay, so help me out with the question again. You're wanting to know if, since the project itself is already behind on its, we have a couple more minutes, behind on its budget, you're approximately $1 million short. How do you prioritize? I'm not acquainted with buyback.
Buyback strategy, maybe it's just something for this project, is that what they want to do is they want to package all the things you can't do into a certain buckets of money and go, okay, you want us to do this, these rooms, you've got to give us that bucket of money, adding to offset $1 million.
Okay, so you're basically value engineering. You're dividing it up into packages and trying to make decisions on what you can actually afford, or go get your external funding, or just whatever you can afford. Yeah, you don't have any choice. I mean, that is the logic you have to do. You're going to have to sit down and really prioritize value engineering, do what you're doing, package it, and buy what you can. But that's, go ahead.
What I heard was, what is the, do you get the quality that you want in certain rooms and not have anything in the other rooms, as opposed to get mediocre, a system that minimally functions across the board?
Oh, I apologize. I misunderstood.
That's what I heard.
I misunderstood. That's your decision. I mean, whether or not you want to go in with, say, just projectors in all rooms with a laptop model and a control on the wall, or whether you want a full-blown AV system with, document cameras and everything else, those are things that you're going to have to make a decision on institution. Now, my suggestion is you get your infrastructure right for whatever your long-term dreams and desires, and then you make your decision on what you can put in on systems, and then hope and pray down the road that as you go along, you'll be able to add to them and build off of a base system that you put in. I'm sorry, please.
We have the same thing in our institution. We go with a need versus design. If it's a classroom that just never existed before, we can get by with design. But what we would try to push for in our department in general would be to get the most that you can, get a system that you're going to be happy with for the life expectancy of the system. Because having to bring someone else in again is going to, you're going to have to pay this, you're going to stop it all over, you're going to pay labor twice. And so if you just get the system the way you want it to be, it's going to be a cost savings overall. The caveat to that is whether or not they've already scheduled rooms for an anticipated thing. You just have to let the people who are making the decisions decide, are we going to go on hold this project, or are we going to let this go? If you put crappy systems in, the people who think that there's a problem, it's solved. And it's your problem for the life of that place.
But if,
Goal is just don't do it.
those are decisions that you have to make. I think we're out of time, and I appreciate everybody's attention.
I'm sure the gentleman would be more
Sure.
than